Welcome back to mckilliplife. This is Amber, and today we are in the living room. I wanted to give you an update on the blanket. Last time I filmed squares 1 through 4, and I've completed squares 4 through 8, but there's been a kind of rethink so far. As I've been working on squares, of course, I'm using a yarn, and the whole thought of, okay, I need to get more yarn. I need to start thinking about the next yarn I want to get. Brought up a whole thinking session today. So when I started this project, it was basically on a whim. I wanted to learn more Tunisian crochet patterns, and this was a good excuse to do it. Just a sampler blanket, each square having a different pattern. And so I went through the yarn I have, the yarn stash, and chose a bunch of yarn that was similar texture, similar size, because I figured a whole blanket needs to sort of work together. And I was okay with just working with whatever colors I had. But as I've gotten into the project, realizing it's going to be 4 feet by 6 feet, it started sinking in that I do not have enough yarn, all of the same type, to finish the blanket. So as I've been doing the squares, I've been thinking about it, going, okay, I need to go to Joann's and look for yarn that'll work with the yarn I already have. And, you know, in the back of my mind, I want to use up the yarn I have. Don't really want to start a whole new project with all new yarn. So today I went to Joann's and was looking around and kind of had a crisis, because just trying to figure out which colors went together, and what the plan was going forward. And from the 4 squares I've already completed, I already knew I didn't really like the dark blue one, because it didn't show the stitch very well and it didn't really blend in with other colors. So I already planned on redoing the blue one, which wasn't a big deal. That's 1 square out of now 8 that I finished. But the more I thought about it, I'm like, well, I don't really have a lot more of any of this yarn actually. And that so far I've completed another green square. And it was kind of the same color, but kind of not the same yarn. So the whole thought of having enough yarn for the entire project and making it be cohesive made me rethink some things. So here are the first 4 squares that I completed, and I've already decided I'm going to redo this in a different color. And then, so that leaves me these ones. And now I've completed this one and this one. And then I did another green one. And just recently I finished another white one. And like I was saying, the green yarns aren't the same. They look similar, but they're not the same. And I don't really have any more of either of these that I want to be using. So I decided I want to redo these 2. So now that leaves me with these 5 squares as the starting of the blanket. And at Joann's, I was able to find a white speckled yarn that's very similar to what I'm using now. So that's good. I can continue using the white. And this is all I have left of the brown taupe fabric. So I can continue doing those squares, but that is not enough yarn to make a 4 foot by 6 foot blanket. I did go ahead and get 3 of these, but they did not have anything of it similar to this color. So trying to find other yarn that'll work with these colors. So at this point, these are the colors I've chosen. So we have a blue, rosé color, a green, a yellow, and then this yarn is really cool. It's a variegated and it has all sorts of colors in it that should bring up these ones. So my idea is to have this yarn be the edge of the entire blanket. And I was thinking maybe doing this yarn between all the squares, but since I've already completed squares in that color, I don't know if that's going to happen. But the thought at this point is all the main squares with the different stitches will be from these deeper colors. So I'm still flying by the seat of my pants, but I think a plan's coming together. A little bit of backtracking with having to redo these 3 squares, but at least I am figuring this out now and not later. But I think overall, with this color scheme, it should be a pretty blanket. It also helped that the yarn was on sale today at Joann's. To review, the 4 new patterns I've completed is this one. This is called a Smock Stitch. And then I did this one. This is called the Top Loop Stitch. Really creative names here. This one is the Rib Stitch. So it looks similar to ribbing and knitting. And then this one I just completed tonight, and it's Tiny Clusters. And I'll have all the tutorials I used for these stitches linked below. So if you're interested in them, you can go ahead and take a look. And as you can see, these are squares that have not been blocked, and you can see they're curling, whereas like this is one that I did block, so it's curling less. And the same thing for these. These ones are definitely curling less. That one's still curling some, even though it was blocked, but I'm not too concerned about it. At the end of the last video, I was working on this stitch, the Smock Stitch. So I was working on the Smock Stitch, and if you remember, I was working on it thinking something's not quite right, the shape's weird, it keeps going at an angle, and when I actually completed it, or came close to completing it, it was basically a diamond shape. It was definitely not a square shape. So I had to look up a different tutorial, and it was significantly different. Like it had a whole skip stitch that you had to include, and an extra stitch that you had to be counting, and it was very different than the first tutorial I was following. So when I did redo it, I did end up pulling out the whole thing and redoing it, but I'm quite pleased with this shape now. Obviously it's all curled, but you know, it's much more square shaped. So at this point, I have 8 squares done, and I'll be redoing 3 of them. At least now I have a color scheme and an idea of what's going to happen. Overall blanket. So I hope you enjoyed this update. Thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you next time. This is a new channel, so please consider liking and subscribing. Have a good day.